Somebody gave you a rule. Maybe a teacher, maybe a parent, maybe some personal finance account you follow. The rule was simple. Spend 50% on needs, 30% on wants, save 20%. Easy, clean, foolproof. And if you actually tried to follow it and failed, if you sat down with your paycheck, ran the numbers, and thought, this literally doesn't add up, I need you to hear something. That was not your fault. The rule was broken before you ever touched it. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why, and more importantly, what actually works instead. Stick around, because the replacement system is something you can start using today, even if you've never budgeted a day in your life. Before I tear this rule apart, let me make sure we're on the same page about what it actually says, because a lot of people get it slightly wrong, and that matters. The 50-30-20 rule says you take your monthly income after taxes and split it into 3 buckets. 50% goes to your needs: rent, groceries, utilities, transportation, health insurance, the non-negotiables. 30% goes to wants: eating out, streaming services, new clothes, concert tickets, the fun stuff. And 20% goes to savings: your emergency fund, retirement, paying off debt. That's it. 3 numbers, 3 categories. And on paper, it looks almost elegant. Let's run the numbers with a real example. Say you bring home $3,000 a month after taxes, which is actually pretty common for a lot of young Americans in entry-level jobs. Under this rule, you'd put $1,500 toward needs, $900 toward wants, and save $600. Sounds reasonable, right? Here's where it starts to fall apart. And I mean structurally, mathematically fall apart. And once you see why, you'll never look at this rule the same way again. That $1,500 for needs. Let's talk about what that actually has to cover. The average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in cities like Austin, Denver, Nashville, and Charlotte is now well over $1,400 a month. In cities like New York, LA, or Seattle, you'd be lucky to find a room, not an apartment, a room for $1,500. So before you've bought a single grocery, paid a single utility bill, or put a single dollar of gas in your car, your needs budget is already gone. And remember, that 50% is supposed to cover all of it. Here's a good way to picture it. Imagine someone ordered a pizza for you. Generous, right? Except by the time it arrives, more than half of it is already eaten. And then someone looks at what's left and says, okay, now split that into needs, wants, and savings. That's what this rule is handing you in most American cities right now: a half-eaten pizza and instructions for a whole one. But it's not just the rent problem. The original 50-30-20 rule was created by Senator Elizabeth Warren back in the early 2000s, based on research from households making well above the median income, with relatively stable jobs and manageable debt. It was not designed for someone making $38,000 a year in a gig economy, carrying $30,000 in student loans, and watching their rent go up every 12 months. The economic reality it was built for and the economic reality most young Americans are living in right now are 2 completely different worlds. And that gap is why so many people try this rule, fail, and walk away thinking they're just bad with money. They're not. They're using the wrong tool. Now, before I give you what actually works, I want to address something that I think is quietly doing a lot of damage. The most expensive mistake people make when 50-30-20 doesn't work isn't the budgeting failure itself. It's what happens after. They try the rule, it falls apart within 2 weeks, and they quietly conclude that budgeting just isn't for them. They stop tracking. They stop paying attention. They go back to checking their bank balance and hoping for the best. And that decision, that moment of giving up, costs them far more in the long run than any bad budget ever could. Think about it like this. Imagine you tried to wear a pair of shoes and they hurt your feet. You'd take them off, right? You wouldn't keep wearing them and assume your feet were the problem. But that's exactly what most people do with budgeting. They try one system, it doesn't fit their life, and instead of finding a better system, they quit wearing shoes altogether. The shame around financial failure is one of the most underrated reasons people stay stuck. So if that's you, if you've tried to budget and it hasn't worked, that's not a character flaw. That's a mismatch between a system and a reality, and we can fix that. But first, there's a myth I need to clear up, because it's leading a lot of people to make a specific mistake that's actually costing them money every single month. Here's the myth. If you just budget correctly, you can make any income work. It sounds inspiring. It's also not entirely true. Budgeting is a tool, a powerful one, but a tool can't create money that isn't there. If your rent-to-income ratio is genuinely unsustainable, a spreadsheet alone won't fix that. Eventually, something else has to change, whether that's income, location, or living situation. What budgeting can do, and this is where it's genuinely powerful, is help you make smarter decisions with what you do have, and help you build toward better options faster. That distinction matters, because people who believe the myth tend to feel like they're failing at something personal when the system doesn't deliver. You're not. Keep that separation clear. Now, here's the part that genuinely surprises most people. Ready? Saving less money at the right time and in the right situation can actually make you wealthier faster. That sounds completely backwards, so let me show you the math. Say you have $3,000 in credit card debt at 22% interest. And say you're faithfully saving $400 a month in a high-yield savings account, earning 4.5%. On the surface, you're being responsible. You're saving. But you're paying 22% to borrow that $3,000 while earning only 4.5% on your savings. The net effect? You are losing roughly 17 cents on every single dollar every single year. You are literally paying to save. The financially smarter move, the one that actually builds wealth faster, is to attack that high-interest debt first. Pay it down aggressively, then redirect that money into savings. That is a higher return than almost any investment you could make. The 50-30-20 rule just says save 20% and moves on. It doesn't make this distinction. And that blind spot is quietly costing people real money. So now that you know what doesn't work and why, here's what does. The system I'm about to walk you through has 3 parts. They build on each other, so stay with me. Part 1, the survival number. Forget percentages for now. Instead, start with one question. What do I absolutely have to pay this month to keep my life running? Rent, groceries, utilities, minimum debt payments, transportation to get to work. Write every single one of those down and add them up. That total is your survival number, your financial floor. Nothing else gets talked about until this number is covered. This matters because it grounds you in your actual reality, not in a theoretical formula. Once you know your floor, subtract it from your take-home income. What's left is your real working budget. And that's what you'll split between everything else. Not a percentage of your whole paycheck, a percentage of what actually remains. That shift alone changes everything. Part 2, build your floors in order. Here's a simple way to think about financial priorities. Imagine a building. You can't build the second floor until the first one is solid, and if you try to skip ahead, the whole thing comes down. Floor 1 is survival, your non-negotiables, covered every month without exception. Floor 2 is a starter emergency fund, not a big one, just $500 to $1,000. That's not wealth, it's a buffer. It's the thing that means one flat tire or one surprise medical bill doesn't blow up your entire month. Floor 3 is high-interest debt. If you have credit cards, personal loans, or any debt above around 8% interest, this is your highest leverage financial move right now. Pay it down aggressively before you focus on anything else. Floor 4 is long-term savings and investing. This is where 401ks, index funds, and Roth IRAs live. Most personal finance advice starts here, but if floors 1 through 3 aren't solid, floor 4 will eventually crack under the pressure. Do them in order. Part 3, the 3-bucket flex system. Once your survival is covered and your floors are in order, here's how to handle the rest of your money in a way that actually adapts to your life. 3 buckets. Bucket 1 is stability. Anything that protects your floor, including your minimum debt payments and your emergency fund contributions. This bucket is non-negotiable. It gets filled first, every month, no exceptions. Bucket 2 is progress. This is where you put extra debt payments or savings contributions, whichever gives you the higher return based on interest rates. Some months, this bucket is big. Some months it's small. That's fine. Bucket 3 is life. Food with friends, a hobby, a weekend trip, something that makes your day-to-day worth showing up for. Budgets that leave zero room for living don't last. Not because people are weak, but because nobody can sustain a life that feels like pure deprivation. Give yourself a life bucket. Protect it. The percentages inside these 3 buckets flex month to month based on your actual income. Good month? Progress bucket grows. You move faster. Tight month? Stability stays full, the others shrink. You stay in control either way. Here's what I want you to actually walk away with. The 50-30-20 rule was designed for a different economic era, for higher incomes, and for more stable financial lives than most young Americans have right now. Using it isn't your fault. Quitting budgeting because it didn't work is the only real mistake to avoid. Paying off high-interest debt is saving, often the highest return saving you can do. Find your survival number first, and work with what's left, not with a percentage of the total. Build your financial floors in the right order. Survival, emergency buffer, high-interest debt, then long-term savings. And use a flex system with 3 buckets that moves with your life, not against it. None of this requires a finance degree. None of it requires a complicated app. It just requires knowing your actual numbers and making decisions in the right order. That's it. Here's the thing I really want to leave you with. The fact that you watch this entire video means you give a damn about your financial life, and that alone puts you ahead of most people your age. Not because they're irresponsible, but because nobody teaches this stuff. You're not behind. You're just starting with better information than most people get. Start with your survival number this week. Literally just write it down. That one step will tell you more about your actual financial situation than any budgeting app ever will. If this video changed how you see money, even a little, hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. And if you want to keep learning how money actually works, in plain language, without the jargon and without the judgment, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. I'll see you in the next one.